There are moments in life when the ground beneath your feet no longer feels solid. When you wake up to silence that feels louder than any sound. When the news brings more confusion than clarity, and when the people around you seem just out of reach. It is not always dramatic or visible. Sometimes fear arrives quietly, slipping through the cracks of a routine day, resting behind a smile, hidden in the long hours of the night. And when it does, it can make you question where to turn and whether you are strong enough to face what lies ahead. Fear rarely announces itself with warning. It shows up in the form of a phone call you were not expecting, in the sudden change of circumstances you never asked for, in the emptiness of a house that used to be filled with laughter, in the subtle ache of loneliness that deepens without explanation. Even those who seem strong are not immune. Confidence fades, answers dissolve, and the heart wonders if anyone sees the weight it carries. In those fragile hours, when no amount of planning or self-talk can hold you together, something deeper is needed. Not noise, not more explanations. What the soul cries for is safety, reassurance, a place to rest where questions do not need immediate answers, a shelter where you are not judged for trembling, but simply held. It is in that inner wilderness, where emotions swirl and faith feels faint, that the ancient words of Psalm 91 speak the loudest. This psalm is not a relic from a different time. It is not a ceremonial prayer or poetic chant. It is a living promise. It was breathed out for the very moment you are in now. Its words are not meant for perfect people or peaceful times. They were given for the trembling heart, the restless spirit, the one who sits in silence and wonders if anyone knows the storm within. They were written for you. If you have felt overwhelmed lately, if fear has taken a seat beside you, or anxiety has stolen your rest, know this: you are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified because you feel weak. In fact, it is to the weary that these words extend their hand. The promises of Psalm 91 were not written for perfect seasons. They were written for chaos, for pain, for confusion. They were written for today. Even when the path is unclear, even when emotions feel too heavy to carry, this psalm whispers a truth stronger than fear. There is a shelter. There is a safe place, and it is not far from you. It is close, closer than you know. There is a place to hide that is not about escape, but about presence. A place where your trembling does not offend, where your doubts do not push you away, where your questions do not scare God. You can bring your whole self into this space, the confident and the confused, the bold and the broken, and still be welcome. When the heart searches for peace, it does not want cliches, it does not want empty phrases, it wants truth, the kind that does not change with the weather, the kind that steadies your steps when you do not know what tomorrow holds. Psalm 91 offers that truth. It is a sanctuary for the soul, a reminder that even when the world feels unstable, your foundation can be sure. Do not rush past these words. Let them settle. Let them wrap around your fears like a warm covering on a cold night. Let them remind you that your story is not over and that fear does not get the final word. You are not invisible in your pain. You are not abandoned in your fear. Someone sees you, holds you, and watches over you. This is not about escaping life's storms. It is about finding peace in the middle of them. And that peace begins with a whisper that has echoed through generations. There is a refuge, and you are welcome there. Psalm 91 is not a distant comfort, it is a present help, and it was written very personally for moments like this, when your heart does not know where to turn, but still longs for a place to rest. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. These words from Psalm 91 verse 1 do not merely describe a location. They unveil a spiritual posture, a way of being, a quiet turning of the soul toward something greater than itself. The secret place is not hidden because it is hard to find. but because it is found in stillness, and stillness has become rare in a world obsessed with speed, noise, and distraction. We often look for peace in changed circumstances, thinking that if only the pressure would lift or the conflict would end, we could finally breathe again. But the sacred truth wrapped in this verse reveals something far deeper. Peace does not come from what surrounds you. It is born in the presence you choose to dwell in. To dwell means to remain, to linger, to make your home in a place. It is not a passing visit or a temporary escape. The secret place is a space where the heart remains, not out of obligation, but out of hunger. And it is secret not because it is exclusive, but because it is intimate. It is a communion between creator and creation that cannot be replicated or explained by outward rituals. This place is where the soul finally exhales. It is where the walls come down, the masks are removed, and the spirit no longer performs, but simply exists before the one who already knows and accepts every hidden thought. So how does one enter this secret place? Not with effort, but with surrender. Not by force, but by consent. It begins with acknowledging that your strength is not enough, and your answers cannot carry you through every storm. It begins when you stop trying to fix what is broken and instead fall into the arms of the one who never fails. You enter this place when you sit in silence, not just external silence, but an inward stillness that says, I do not have to fight this alone. You enter when you pray without rehearsed words, when your soul whispers what your mouth cannot say, when your tears become your language and your ache becomes your offering. It is in these unguarded moments, when the world fades and the heart stands bare, that the presence of God becomes tangible, not dramatic, not loud, but real, like a soft covering over a weary body, like a cool breeze on an anxious heart. The secret place is not a location to be mapped, but a reality to be lived. It can be found in a quiet room, in a long drive, in the early hours before sunrise. It is not about environment, but about engagement. It is wherever your heart turns inward and upward, trusting that the one who watches in secret will meet you there. In that place, anxiety loses its grip, not because all the causes of stress disappear, but because the presence you step into is greater than the pressure you feel. When you dwell with the Most High, the weight of life is not ignored, it is rebalanced. The burden does not vanish, but it is shared with one who is stronger. In this sacred communion, the inner storm quiets. The questions do not always get answered, but they no longer scream. Peace is not the result of understanding everything. It is the result of trusting someone greater than your understanding, and trust grows in silence. Not in the silence that isolates, but in the silence that heals. It is here, in this dwelling place, that your soul is realigned. The fears that once dominated your thoughts are exposed as smaller than you imagined. The lies that told you you were alone begin to fade. You begin to see that the secret place is not a hiding spot from life, but a home where life is restored. It is where your identity is not tied to what you do or what others say, but to the gaze of the one who sees you and calls you his. The world may never understand this kind of peace. It will chase solutions and strategies. It will offer temporary relief and distractions dressed as answers. But none of those can touch the core of who you are. Only the secret place can do that. Only the dwelling presence of the Most High can anchor a drifting heart. And this is not reserved for the elite or the spiritually advanced. It is open to anyone willing to pause, to lean in, to say, I do not have to be strong right now. I just have to be here. Over time, as you return to this place, something begins to shift. Your responses change. Your fears lose volume. Your hope deepens, not because circumstances have changed, but because you have. You are no longer just surviving, you are dwelling, not rushing through prayer, not performing religion, but truly dwelling. This is where healing begins. This is where courage is formed. This is where the soul is strengthened, not through striving, but through staying. And in this staying, in this abiding, you discover a truth that shapes everything else. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of God. And once you have tasted this peace, nothing else satisfies. The secret place becomes your refuge, not just in crisis, but in every moment you need to remember who you are and who holds you. Here in silence, in surrender, in stillness, you are not just visited by peace, you are transformed by it. The shadow of the Almighty. These words, simple and poetic, hold within them a depth of safety that defies human comprehension. When the psalmist wrote those words in Psalm 91 verse 1, it was not to present a distant or abstract idea, but to reveal an unseen reality, a spiritual truth cloaked in everyday language. A shadow is not something you can hold in your hands, yet its presence proves something is near. You do not see the shadow unless the source of it is close. To abide under the shadow of the Almighty means you are no longer wandering in isolation. You are near, covered, protected, wrapped in the presence of the One whose power cannot be challenged and whose love cannot be measured. In ancient times, a shadow represented far more than relief from the sun. It symbolized protection, belonging, and nearness. In a desert climate, the shadow was a place of survival. It was shelter from burning heat, a gift to the traveler who had grown weary. In spiritual terms, to be under God's shadow is to live beneath His constant awareness, to be so close that His presence shades your every step. This is not a partial covering, nor is it seasonal. It is complete, continuous, and born from relationship. When you draw near, when you trust in His nearness, you begin to understand that divine protection is not only about what God shields you from, it is about who He becomes to you in the process. There is a difference between standing next to someone and standing under their shadow. The shadow covers you, envelopes you, marks your position in relation to the source. This metaphor tells us that protection is not merely a concept, it is a condition of proximity. To live under the shadow of the Almighty means you are never out of reach. Even when your feelings tell you otherwise, even when your surroundings suggest abandonment, the truth remains. You are under His wing, beneath His shield, surrounded by His might. And the shadow doesn't move away when the storm rolls in. It does not vanish in difficulty. In fact, it becomes all the more evident when the light around you dims. When the world casts confusion and fear, the presence of His shadow becomes a quiet confirmation. He is here, the shadow of the Almighty. So often, people carry invisible wounds, emotional bruises no one else can see, memories that press on the heart with quiet weight, fears that rise in the dark when no one is around to reassure. And in those moments, the promise of a shadow might seem small. But the shadow of the Almighty is not a weak metaphor. It is not a poetic escape from reality. It is the most solid ground a soul can stand on. To be beneath that shadow means nothing can touch you unless it passes through Him first. It means that although pain may come close, it is never allowed to define your worth or dictate your end. His covering is not only over you, it surrounds you. It is as near as your breath and as steady as the rising sun. For those who feel exposed, whether by the judgments of others, the chaos of the world, or the echo of their own failures, this truth offers rest. You are not open to every attack. You are not an easy target for destruction. You are not standing alone, hoping to survive whatever comes next. You are covered by the One who shaped the galaxies, who holds time in His hands, who knows your story from beginning to end. His shadow is not cast by distance, but by closeness. You are not far from Him. You are not forgotten. You are not outside the reach of His love. You are at this very moment within His presence, even if you cannot feel it, even if everything around you says otherwise. And that shadow is more than defense. It is a place of communion. It is where your identity is protected from the labels the world tries to place on you, where your future is not defined by your past, where your soul is safe to breathe again, where you do not have to prove yourself, because the one who covers you already knows your heart. In his shadow, shame loses its voice, fear loses its strength, and striving loses its power. There, you do not have to perform. You simply rest. It is important to understand that divine protection does not always mean a life without hardship. What it means is that even in hardship, you are not unguarded. It means there is a boundary around your life that the enemy cannot cross, a divine limit to what is allowed, and an eternal promise that whatever touches your life must serve a higher purpose. The shadow of the Almighty is not a fragile veil. It is a fortress no force can penetrate. It is a hidden sanctuary in plain sight, available not to the fearless, but to those who dare to trust. To dwell in that shadow is to choose faith over fear. It is to walk through life not without battles, but without being destroyed by them. It is to believe, even when everything says otherwise, that you are covered, that you are seen, that you are not alone, and that the one who covers you is not weak, distant, or indifferent. He is the Almighty, the all-sufficient, the one who never sleeps, never slumbers, never forgets. And his shadow, his very nearness, is your place of safety. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler. Psalm 91 verse 3 begins with the word surely for a reason. It does not suggest possibility. It declares certainty. It does not say perhaps he will, or if you are good enough he might. It says surely. This is not an offer wrapped in conditions. It is a promise wrapped in certainty. It is spoken into the heart of the one who feels stuck, tangled in things too deep to explain, too complex to untangle alone. The psalmist knew something about the traps life sets, not just physical dangers, but those invisible snares that tighten around the soul when no one is watching. The snare of the fowler was not designed to be seen. In ancient times, fowlers, those who trapped birds, did not chase their prey in open fields. They waited, they studied, they disguised the snare beneath brush and shadow. The whole design was meant to go unnoticed until it was too late. The bird, unaware, would step forward, perhaps chasing food or simply moving through the day, only to find its freedom suddenly gone. That is how many traps work. They are not obvious, they are not loud, they are subtle, creeping up in moments of weakness, hidden under what once seemed harmless. Addiction does not begin with destruction, it begins with comfort. Toxic relationships do not start with pain, they start with promises. Guilt does not arrive screaming, it whispers quietly in the night. For many, the trap is not something they willingly entered. It is something they slowly drifted into, step by step, until turning back seemed impossible. Maybe it was a decision made out of fear. Maybe it was an escape that became a pattern. Maybe it was a lie they believed about themselves, about God, or about their worth. The snare tightens gradually. It does not always bruise the body. It wounds the identity. It tells you that you are defined by what you did, that you cannot change, that this is just how life will be. It convinces you that freedom is for others, not for you, that if anyone truly knew what you carry, they would walk away. And yet, Psalm 91 speaks directly into that despair, not from a distance, but with the nearness of someone who sees every strand of the net and still calls your name with hope. Deliverance is not just release, it is intentional rescue. It is the hand of the Almighty reaching into what was meant to destroy you and pulling you out, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. When the psalm says he will deliver you from the snare, it means there is no trap too complex for him, no mess too tangled, no guilt too deep. You may have been caught off guard, but he never is. You may not see a way out, but he has already drawn the escape route. And the beautiful truth is that he does not wait for you to earn rescue. He initiates it. He moves toward you, even when you feel undeserving. even when shame tells you to hide. He steps into the places where you thought no light could enter and begins dismantling the lies, one by one. Some people live their whole lives with the belief that the trap they are in is their fault, their cross to bear, their consequence to endure. They wear their chains like a second skin, convinced that this is how it will always be. But the message of Psalm 91 is not that you must fix yourself before you are helped. It is that help comes precisely because you cannot fix it. Deliverance is not earned, it is given. And it does not come in the form of temporary relief. It comes in the form of transformation, the kind of change that does not just open the trap, but renders it powerless. Life is full of snares that are carefully designed to hold the soul captive. The snare of fear, the snare of comparison, the snare of perfectionism, always reaching for a standard that cannot be met, the snare of past regret, replaying scenes you cannot change. Each of these has the power to paralyze a heart, to make freedom seem like a distant idea rather than a present reality. But the truth is, none of these are stronger than grace. None of them are beyond the reach of the deliverer. His hand is not limited by what you see. His timing is not hindered by how long you have been stuck. His willingness to save is not reduced by your mistakes. You may feel like the trap was tailor-made for you, so precise in its pressure that it knows exactly where to squeeze. But the same detail that went into setting the snare is nothing compared to the wisdom and power of the one who sets captives free. He does not simply open a door and hope you find your way out. He walks you through it. He carries you when your legs are too weak to move. He speaks truth over you when your mind is clouded by lies. And when he delivers, he does not just remove you from the snare, he restores what it took from you, the years it stole, the joy it buried, the peace it shattered. He brings it all back, piece by piece, not because you earned it, but because he is faithful. This is not the end of your story. The trap you are in is not your final chapter. You are not written off. You are not forgotten. You are not condemned to stay where you are. There is deliverance, and it is not theoretical, it is real. You may not feel it yet, you may not see how it will happen, but surely he shall deliver you. Not by accident, not as a distant idea, but as a promise that cannot be broken. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. These words, found in Psalm 91 verses 5 and 6, are not passive encouragements. They are declarations. They are not designed to soothe the surface of anxiety, but to cut through its roots. This is not poetic idealism. It is spiritual instruction. It is an anthem of authority given to the one who lives under divine protection. The psalm does not pretend that terror and danger are imaginary. It names them clearly: nighttime terror, flying arrows, lurking pestilence, open destruction, each one representing a different face of fear that presses against the human soul. Fear does not need much to gain ground. It grows quickly in uncertainty, thrives in silence, and multiplies in isolation. It comes dressed in 1,000 forms, adapting to the specific cracks in a person's heart. Sometimes it comes in the form of fear of failure, whispering that you are not enough and never will be. Sometimes it arrives as fear of rejection, convincing you that if people really knew you, they would walk away. At other times, it rises in the form of fear of death, that lingering sense that life is fragile and one misstep could take everything away. Then there is the fear of the unknown, the kind that does not shout but lingers quietly in the background, always asking what if. It is these fears, both loud and subtle, that Psalm 91 addresses, not with denial but with defiance. You shall not be afraid. That is not a suggestion. It is not a hope. It is a statement of identity for those who dwell in the secret place, who abide under the shadow of the Almighty. It does not mean you will never feel the rise of anxiety or face situations that challenge your peace. But it does mean fear no longer gets to own you. It no longer gets to decide your responses, dictate your choices, or define your reality. There is a difference between feeling afraid and being ruled by fear. This psalm draws that line clearly. The one who is covered by the Most High may still face battles, but they do not live under the reign of fear. They walk with confidence, not because life is predictable, but because their foundation is unshakable. Day and night, the psalmist writes, danger may come. The arrow by day, the terror by night. Both speak to different seasons of fear. Some fears are public, easily seen, like arrows flying through the air, attacks on your reputation, your career, your finances. Others are private, hidden in the stillness of the night when the world is quiet and your mind races with questions you cannot answer. Nighttime fear is often the most difficult because it isolates. It convinces you that no one else feels this way. It amplifies insecurities and imagines worst-case scenarios. It paints pictures of doom on the canvas of your thoughts. Yet the promise still stands. You shall not be afraid, not because there is nothing to fear, but because you are not defenseless. The psalm is not inviting you to pretend. It is equipping you to stand. The weapon against fear is not denial. It is truth. And truth is not fragile. It is not afraid of your questions or your doubts. It stands firm when everything else shakes. The truth is that fear is not your inheritance. You were not created to live in constant dread. You were not formed in anxiety. You were formed in love, and perfect love casts out fear, not occasionally, not partially, completely. The kind of love that sees every part of you and still says, I will not leave. That is the love you are covered by. And that is why you can face fear and say, you no longer have power here. Faith does not mean you never feel fear. It means fear does not get the final say. It means that in the middle of the unknown, you still choose to believe that God is who He says He is. It means that when lies come at you like arrows, you raise your shield, not a shield of performance or effort, but a shield of faith. Faith that says, I do not have to see everything to know that I am safe. Faith that holds on when feelings fall apart. Worship becomes your response, not because you are pretending everything is okay, but because you are declaring that even in the midst of chaos, God is worthy and fear is a liar. Every time you worship in the face of fear, you rewrite your story. You silence the voice that said you would always be afraid. You dismantle the agreement that fear made with your identity. And slowly, fear begins to lose its grip. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Your perspective shifts, your authority grows, your spirit begins to rise. And you realize that Psalm 91 is not a wish, it is a weapon. It is not an escape from danger, but a call to live boldly in the middle of it. The same God who covers you also arms you. He does not just protect your heart, He empowers it. He teaches your hands to war and your mind to rest. So when fear speaks, you speak back. You declare what is true, not what you feel. You remind yourself that you are not abandoned, not vulnerable, not unprepared. You are shielded, guarded, and loved. And in that love, fear cannot remain. This is not just for a moment. It is a way of living, a way of waking up in the morning and refusing to bow to dread, a way of walking into uncertainty with confidence that you are not alone, a way of closing your eyes at night and knowing that you are watched over, that nothing in the darkness is stronger than the light that surrounds you. Psalm 91 invites you to live without fear, not by your strength, but by His presence. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked. These words from Psalm 91 verses 7 and 8 do not paint a picture of calm fields and peaceful sunsets. They place the reader right in the middle of collapse, surrounded by destruction, where the weight of loss is not hypothetical, it is visible, tangible, overwhelming. This passage speaks into moments where the walls give way, when trusted foundations crack, and when everything you thought would remain steady begins to shift beneath your feet. It is in such moments, moments where chaos is not just near, but everywhere, that the psalm speaks with unwavering certainty. There is something deeply personal about watching others fall, whether through betrayal, illness, financial ruin, or emotional collapse. Witnessing the unraveling of lives around you shakes something internal. It brings questions that linger like echoes. Am I next? What if I cannot hold on? What if my strength is not enough? Fear does not always attack with volume. Sometimes it slips in through patterns you observe, trends you notice, and the constant stream of stories that convince you survival is rare and security is temporary. In a world where the news cycles feed on crisis, it is easy to begin thinking in terms of numbers, as if you are just one more life waiting to be counted among the fallen. But Psalm 91 interrupts that narrative. It does not deny the reality of destruction. It does not claim that no one will face difficulty. Instead, it makes a clear distinction. Others may fall, but you are held. The falling of thousands does not predict your end. It does not dictate your outcome. It may happen beside you, around you, even close enough to touch, but it will not consume you. This is not wishful thinking. It is not spiritual optimism detached from pain. It is the assurance that covenant is stronger than crisis. The same covenant that covered those before you who stood through floods, flames, and battles now rests upon your life. You are not vulnerable in the hands of chance. You are not waiting for fate to decide your survival. You are under promise, and that promise holds. This promise is not one of untouched ease. It is a promise of unshakable presence. It does not mean pain will never come close, but that pain will not define your destiny. It does not mean tears will never fall, but that your soul will not be swept away by the current. When 10,000 fall at your right hand, it can be difficult not to internalize the fear, not to believe that collapse is inevitable. But divine preservation does not depend on trends or statistics. It is rooted in a person who cannot lie and a word that cannot fail. There are times when betrayal stings in places deeper than any wound, when someone you trusted turns away, or when support you counted on disappears without explanation. It is in those moments that Psalm 91 becomes more than comfort. It becomes defiance, a holy resistance against the pull of despair. You are not forgotten in the collapse. You are not buried beneath the fallout of other people's decisions. You are seen, held, protected, even when all that surrounds you says otherwise. Loss may surround your life in seasons. People you loved may be gone. Opportunities may have faded. Dreams may have been delayed or shattered. But in the middle of that destruction, this psalm declares something unchanging. You are not alone in the ruins. The hand that formed the heavens has not let go of yours. The God who brought order out of chaos in the beginning is still bringing stability where everything else feels unstable. He has not abandoned you to statistics. He has not placed you on a list of collateral damage. You are not a number in the noise. You are known by name, called by promise, and kept by grace. Sometimes it is not just about the fear of personal failure, it is the despair that comes from watching the world unravel. When you see families breaking, morality shifting, violence increasing, and truth dismissed, it can weigh heavily on your heart. It can make you wonder whether good can still stand in the face of so much darkness. But the psalmist's words bring you back to center. You are not meant to carry the collapse. You are not responsible for holding the world together. What you are called to do is stand. Stand in promise, in trust, in faith that your position in God is not shaken by the falling of others. You are not blind to what is happening, but you are not defined by it either. You will see with your eyes, the psalm says. This speaks of awareness. You are not oblivious to suffering, nor immune to compassion. But what you see does not determine who you are. While others fall into despair, you stand in peace. While others lose their footing, you find strength. While others are swallowed by fear, you walk with quiet confidence. Not because of who you are in yourself, but because of where you dwell. The Most High is your shelter, your refuge, your anchor. What Psalm 91 invites you into is not ignorance of the pain in this world, but the revelation that even in pain, preservation is real. You do not have to fear collapse, because you are built on something that cannot crumble. Your faith, anchored in a faithful God, becomes your resistance to every narrative that tells you you are next to fall. You are not falling, you are standing, not by chance, not by accident, but by covenant. That covenant does not break under pressure. It does not dissolve in destruction. It remains because he who made it is unchanging. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. When Psalm 91 reaches this verse, it presents a declaration that seems at odds with so much of what life often brings. People suffer. Innocence is wounded. Families break. Loss appears without warning, and grief shows up uninvited. In the face of these realities, the statement, "No evil shall befall you," requires thoughtful reflection. It demands more than a surface reading because without deeper understanding, one might assume that hardship contradicts the promise. But what this verse offers is not denial of difficulty. It offers divine perspective. It reframes protection, not as the absence of pain, but as the guarantee that pain will never determine your final outcome. There is a difference between something touching your life and something owning your life. Evil may approach, trials may come close, but when you are under covenant, none of these forces are permitted to rule over you. Psalm 91 verse 10 is not promising a life without struggle. It is promising that nothing formed against you will ever succeed in separating you from your purpose, your identity, or your eternal security. The evil that may try to rise against you will never be allowed to define you. It may bruise, it may delay, it may frustrate, but it will never undo what God has spoken over your life. You are not protected because bad things never happen. You are protected because even when they do, they will never break the core of who you are in Him. This kind of protection is not always visible on the outside. Sometimes it is what you are being protected from that you never see. Choices you never made, situations you unknowingly avoided, invisible dangers that never reached your path. At other times, protection looks like strength rising in you when everything around you falls apart. It looks like joy returning to your soul when there is no logical reason for joy. It looks like peace staying when the world would expect you to panic. These are not coincidences. They are signs that evil did not win, even when it tried. To dwell in a place where no plague comes near your home does not mean the world outside is quiet. It means that within you there is a stillness that refuses to be stolen. The plague may come near your environment, but it does not enter your dwelling. Not because you are better than others, but because you are guarded by something stronger than circumstance. You are shielded by promises that do not expire. You are held by grace that does not fluctuate with the news, the reports, or the waves of fear that try to creep in through the cracks of daily life. And when evil attempts to speak, when it tries to write its narrative over your days, it is met by resistance it cannot overpower. That resistance is not your effort, it is your covering. You are not fending off darkness alone. You are standing under the protection of a God who has drawn a line and said, "This far, no farther." Evil may shout, but its volume does not determine truth. You are not at the mercy of attack. You are under authority, and that authority does not yield to fear, chaos, or confusion. What this verse affirms is that your destiny is not vulnerable. Your story cannot be hijacked by the forces that oppose your peace. The promise here is not a fragile hope. It is a shield, and that shield holds even when life feels uncertain. To trust this kind of promise is not naive, it is courageous. It means you are choosing to believe something higher than what you see. You are choosing to interpret your life not by pain, but by promise. You are choosing to stand on the conviction that no matter what evil intends, it will never outright the faithfulness of the one who watches over your soul. And so, when the shadows lengthen, when the air feels heavy, when the road seems unclear and the threats around you appear too great, return to this truth: no evil shall befall you. Not because you are immune to reality, but because you are anchored in eternity. The storm may rage, but it will not carry you away. The darkness may rise, but it will not extinguish your light. The enemy may plan, but his plan will not prosper. You live under a covering that no weapon can penetrate and no fear can shake. For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. These words from Psalm 91 verses 11 and 12 are not poetry for the sake of imagination. They are revelation. They reveal a dimension of spiritual reality often overlooked or dismissed. In a world increasingly shaped by the visible, the tangible, and the explainable, the presence and activity of angels can seem distant, even forgotten. But Scripture does not treat them as symbolic or abstract. Angels are presented as active agents of God's will, dispatched with purpose, moving with precision, and charged with protecting those who belong to Him. Their mission is not passive. Their watch over your life is not occasional. It is deliberate, personal, and constant. To know that angels have been given charge over you is to understand that your life is surrounded by more than what you can see. There is an invisible covering around your journey, one that does not sleep, does not fail, and does not wait for you to be perfect before engaging. These heavenly beings are not distracted, not distant, and certainly not hesitant. They move on assignment from the throne of God, responding to His voice and acting in alignment with His will. When you pray, when you cry out, when you whisper your fears in the silence of your room, you are not speaking into empty air. You are activating the very forces of heaven. God hears and He sends, not out of obligation but out of covenant. Not because you have earned it, but because you are His. There are times when you have been carried and did not even know it. Moments where the danger was closer than you realized, where the weight you bore should have crushed you, where the decision you made without understanding was quietly directed by hands you could not see. Angels do not operate for show. They do not announce their presence with fanfare. They move with divine purpose, often without recognition. And yet, their work is profound. They catch what was meant to destroy. They lift when your strength gives out. They surround when you feel exposed. They guard every step, not just in times of visible danger, but in the ordinary movements of life that seem harmless, but are no less sacred. To those who feel unsupported, who have walked long roads of responsibility, grief, or pressure with no visible help, this promise is for you. You have not been alone in your journey. You may not have seen the reinforcement, but it has been there. There have been hands, invisible but strong, that have steadied your steps. There have been messengers of God positioned on either side of your path, ensuring that no enemy has free access to your life. Even when your faith was weak, even when your choices were unclear, even when your emotions clouded your sense of safety, they remained faithful, focused, obedient to the one who sent them for your sake. And these angels are not limited by earthly obstacles. They are not held back by walls, by borders, by human resistance. Their realm is not restricted. When you walk into situations that are emotionally heavy or spiritually dark, you do not walk in unguarded. You carry with you an unseen army, and their presence changes the atmosphere. The very authority of heaven walks beside you. When the weight of your calling feels too much, when the future feels uncertain, when the journey grows long and you begin to wonder if you have the strength to continue, remember this truth. You are not carrying it alone. You were never meant to. Psalm 91 does not speak lightly when it says you will be borne up. This is more than symbolic comfort. It is divine reality. To be borne up means that just before you would have stumbled, there was intervention. Just before your foot would have struck the stone, there was a shift. The angels assigned to you are not reactive. They are anticipatory. They move ahead of you, around you, behind you. Every direction of your life is accounted for. This is not because you are flawless. It is because God is faithful. His love for you is not careless. He provides help in ways you do not always expect, but that never fail to accomplish what they were sent to do. Even in moments of isolation, when support from people is lacking, when encouragement is absent, and when no one seems to notice the weight you are carrying, God notices. And He responds. He sends help that does not flatter, but fortifies. You may walk alone physically, but spiritually, you are surrounded. The reality of angelic assistance may be invisible to the eye, but it is no less true. The same God who sent angels to protect Daniel in the lion's den, to minister to Jesus in the wilderness, to release Peter from prison, this same God still commands angelic forces on behalf of those who trust in Him. You are not living your days unguarded. You are not walking through battles without backup. You are not navigating the unknown with empty hands. Your life is covered in ways deeper than what you feel. Even when you do not sense it, even when your emotions suggest abandonment, heaven is moving. Heaven is fighting for you, lifting you, carrying you. And these angelic assignments are not occasional visits. They are constant guardianship, appointed with clarity, commanded with love, and aligned perfectly with the will of your Father. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. These words from Psalm 91 verse 13 do not describe a posture of fear or retreat. They speak of movement, of forward steps taken not in hesitation, but in strength. The imagery here is not accidental. Lions and serpents are symbols throughout Scripture for two very different kinds of threat, one direct and forceful, the other subtle and deceptive. The lion roars and charges, while the serpent coils and waits. One confronts you with intimidation, the other waits in silence, aiming for your blind spot. Yet the psalmist declares that neither will rule you. Neither will have the power to keep you from the path laid before you. This promise is not just about avoiding danger, it is about walking over it. It is about reclaiming territory, both in your mind and in your spirit, that fear and deception once tried to occupy. Lions in life often represent open opposition, the kind that roars in your face, that tries to break you down through conflict, accusation, crisis, or loss. These are the moments when you feel attacked head-on, when the challenge is visible and the pressure unrelenting. And then there are the serpents, representing those quieter forms of attack, the lies that wrap themselves around your thoughts, the whispers of inadequacy, the slow erosion of trust, the seduction of comfort that pulls you away from truth. Both are real. Both can paralyze the unprepared. But neither are greater than the authority that has been given to you. To tread upon these threats is not to deny their presence, but to walk with the awareness that you are not at their mercy. You have been given spiritual dominion, not a false confidence built on self, but a holy empowerment rooted in truth. This is not about being aggressive for the sake of pride. It is about standing in the identity that was purchased for you. The authority to overcome does not arise from your perfection, your discipline, or your ability to manage problems. It flows from the Spirit of the One who lives within you. It flows from knowing who you belong to and what He has placed in your hands. Walking in spiritual authority means you begin to recognize patterns, those emotional cycles that drain your strength, those lies that revisit your mind in familiar moments, those temptations that knock when you are tired, discouraged, or alone. The serpent thrives in such environments. It seeks the cracks, the moments of weakness, the open doors left unattended. But when you begin to recognize the schemes, you also begin to speak against them. You do not entertain the lies. You expose them. You declare truth, not from a place of doubt, but from conviction. The more truth you carry, the less room deception has to move. And then there are the lions, loud, unmistakable, demanding attention. These can come in the form of confrontation, betrayal, intimidation, or overwhelming fear. They may roar in the form of financial crisis, broken relationships, or a diagnosis that takes your breath away. Their goal is to make you feel small, to convince you that your prayers are powerless and that your God is distant. But Psalm 91 does not say you will run from the lion. It says you will trample it, not in your strength, but with the knowledge that even the most ferocious opposition bows to the presence of God within you. Treading upon lions and serpents is not a one-time act. It is a lifestyle of spiritual vigilance and boldness. It means you do not walk through life waiting to be attacked, but rather understanding that you have already been equipped for every battle. It means you move with discernment, alert but not afraid. You stay rooted in truth, not tossed by emotion. You worship even when the war is unseen. You pray even when answers feel delayed. You stand firm even when opposition comes close. Because what stands within you is greater than what rises against you. The power given to you is not for show. It is for survival, for breakthrough, for advancement. You were never called to simply survive this life. You were called to overcome, to walk in authority, to reclaim what fear tried to take. You were not created to tiptoe through spiritual terrain, always wondering when the next attack will come. You were created to walk in confidence, knowing that every lion and serpent must answer to the name above every name. And that name lives within you, speaks through you, defends you. So the next time fear rises, the next time deception slithers near, the next time pressure mounts, and threats surround, remember this promise, not just as words on a page, but as your reality. You do not stand alone. You do not walk unarmed. You are not bound by fear nor trapped by lies. You walk with authority, with clarity, with the assurance that no threat has the power to write your story. You tread because you are held. You trample because you are empowered. You move forward not just as a survivor, but as one who overcomes. Because he loves me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. With these words, found in Psalm 91 verse 14, the tone of the entire psalm shifts. What was once a declaration about God becomes now a declaration from God. It is no longer a description of divine protection seen from the outside, but a direct response from the one who holds all things in his hands. This moment is not distant or formal. It is intimate. It is the voice of God, speaking not generally to the masses, but specifically to the heart that has chosen him above all else. There is something astonishing in the simplicity and weight of the phrase, because he loves me. It is not complicated. It does not include a long list of conditions or prerequisites. It does not say, because he performed perfectly, because he followed every rule, or because he earned my attention. It says, because he loves me. Love becomes the dividing line, not perfection, not spiritual status, love. And it is not loud, showy love. It is often the quiet love of someone who continues to return, even when it hurts. The love of someone who chooses God not because life is easy, but because they have found no greater refuge. The love that holds on through silence, through delay, through mystery. This kind of love moves God. It reaches through the heavens and stirs his heart to act. The one who loves God is not forgotten. They are not ignored. They are not just part of a crowd. They are known and seen with deep tenderness. When God says, I will deliver him, he is not offering a general possibility. He is making a personal promise. Deliverance is not just a rescue from physical danger. It is the lifting of the soul from despair, the breaking of chains that others may not even see, the redemption of moments that felt too far gone. It is the divine response to the human heart that says, "I still choose you, even when nothing makes sense." And God does not stop at rescue. He continues, "I will set him on high." This is not a statement about fame or status. It is about security. To be set on high means to be placed above the reach of what once threatened to destroy you. It means being elevated, not for recognition, but for protection. When God lifts you, he is not putting you on display. He is giving you rest from the floodwaters that tried to drown your peace. He is placing your life in a position where fear loses access, where shame has no entry, where confusion cannot speak with authority anymore. He sets you on high because he honors the heart that loves him, the soul that has clung to him when it would have been easier to let go. And then comes the reason, because he has known my name. This is not casual awareness. It is not about being familiar with titles or religious language. To know his name means you have walked with him in moments others have not seen. You have experienced his mercy when no one else knew how deeply you needed it. You have learned his character not just through sermons or songs, but through late-night prayers, through moments of silence when you waited without answers, through seasons where everything around you fell apart, but something inside you still whispered, "He is good." To know his name is to carry history with him. It is to have seen him remain faithful, even when you were not sure what the next step should be. This is not a transactional relationship. It is not a system of rewards and punishments. It is covenant. It is personal. It is the result of love that has chosen to stay, not because of what God gives, but because of who he is. The one who loves him does not need to be flawless. They only need to be real. Their devotion may be imperfect, but it is sincere. Their worship may come with trembling, but it comes. And God, in his infinite love, responds, not with distance, but with deliverance, not with judgment, but with elevation, not with silence, but with promises that endure. This moment in the psalm is more than a comforting phrase. It is a window into the heart of the Almighty. It reveals what moves him, what draws his action, what causes him to speak. And it is not power, it is not brilliance, it is not position. It is love. Simple, honest, enduring love, the kind that holds on when there are no guarantees, the kind that keeps praying even when the answer is slow. The kind that returns again and again, not because everything is perfect, but because it is the only place the heart feels truly alive. And to that kind of love, God says, "I will never let you fall. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation." These final words of Psalm 91, found in verse 16, carry more than the idea of extended years. They speak to the fullness of a life anchored in the presence and promises of God. It is not merely about the number of days one lives, but about the depth and richness that fill those days. The satisfaction described here is not the kind that fades after a brief moment of joy. It is a deep, abiding contentment that remains even when circumstances are uncertain. It is the soul's quiet assurance that it is known, protected, and destined for something greater than this world alone can offer. Long life, in the biblical sense, is not defined by the calendar. It is shaped by purpose, by impact, by the presence of meaning in every season. To be satisfied with long life means that your days are not spent wandering aimlessly, but are instead ordered, guided, and filled with the peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. It is the kind of life that allows you to look back without regret and forward without fear. This satisfaction does not come from achievements or accolades. It flows from a relationship with the one who has walked with you through every valley, stood beside you in every storm, and lifted you when you thought you would not rise again. And then comes the final phrase, "and show him my salvation." This is the culmination of everything the psalm has spoken. It is not simply about deliverance from a single moment of danger, but about the revelation of God's complete and eternal rescue. Salvation here is not a concept. It is a person. It is the unveiling of God's heart toward you, his desire not only to protect you in this life, but to draw you into everlasting communion with him. The journey through fear, danger, and darkness was never meant to end in survival alone. It was meant to lead you to the face of the one who saves, not just temporarily, but eternally. This salvation is the constant thread that weaves through every promise in the psalm. It is what makes the secret place accessible, the shadow trustworthy, the trap escapable, and the fear powerless. It is what sends angels to guard, grants authority to trample threats, and moves the heart of God to speak directly to the one who loves him. All of it builds to this final assurance. Your life, from beginning to end, is secure. Not because of what you have done, but because of who he is. His salvation is not distant, it is near, it is present, it is real, and it is yours. You may be in a season where you question the direction of your life. You may feel like the days ahead are filled with uncertainty or loss. But Psalm 91 ends with this unshakable truth. You are not at your end, you are at a turning point. You are not merely surviving, you are being drawn into a life that satisfies, a future that carries eternal significance. Every step you take from this point forward is watched, guided, and covered by grace. You are not walking toward destruction, you are being led toward salvation. And as long as your heart continues to reach for him, his hand will continue to guide you into the fullness of his promise. Let this psalm be more than comfort for a moment. Let it become the foundation for your journey. When fear returns, read it again. When doubt whispers, speak its words aloud. When the world shakes, stand upon its truth. You were not forgotten. You were never abandoned. You are covered, carried, empowered, and loved. The one who has begun this work in you is faithful to bring it to completion, and he will satisfy you, not just with length of years, but with the beauty of a life redeemed. If this message spoke to your heart today, do not keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another message of truth and encouragement. Like the video to help it reach others who may be searching for hope right now. Share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear how Psalm 91 has impacted your life. And most importantly, share this video with someone close to you. There may be someone right now feeling afraid or lost who needs to hear that they are not alone. Let this be the gift of hope you pass forward today.